Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us. We're really honored. Like it's
Yeah.
been a long time coming. uh,
Um,
I was actually talking to Chris Scott last night, and I was like, "Hey, we're me and Frank are going to be on the Three Gun show." He was like, "Oh, no kidding! Like that really helped get me into Three Gun. That's so awesome."
no way, that's cool.
Yeah.
I actually I listened to what we're here to talk about 3GIQ in part, which is your podcast as well. I listened to Chris on 3GIQ, and that guy's hilarious.
Oh
And
yeah.
he's so serious on the range, and even in the show he's like, yeah, I try not to be too serious on the range. And like, no, you're serious on the range. But that guy's hilarious, so it's cool to hear that the show had some sort of influence on him. That's great, man.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I when I came onto the team, like I listened to podcasts a little bit before that, but like we spend so much time on the road. It was like,
Yeah.
you know what? Let me educate myself and let me listen to things that's going to really help shape my way of thinking whenever it comes to being on the team and how I can really transition the team from where we are now to where we want to be. And so like this is one of the shows that really influenced. It was like Three Gun Show, Firearms Nation podcast, like different shows within the shooting community that really influence like how the team has developed today.
Dude, that's cool to hear. That's great to hear. Well, and so we've had a couple Marines on in the past, right? So we've had James Gill in
Yep.
episode 94. If you're interested in listening to that one, you can go back and check it out. And then in 108, we had the reserve action shooting team. So it's nice to be able to speak to you guys here today.
Oh, absolutely. We appreciate you having us.
I got to give you a little bit of a hard time though. You like name checked everybody you've ever shot with in your first episode, and like your boy Dave Harmon didn't even come up. Come on, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't remember. I don't even remember the first episode. I've been hit too many times in the head. Too much.
No, but we got to shoot together at the Wyoming
Wyoming.
Governor's match. What was it, like 2 years ago? Was it the 2020? We weren't allowed to shake hands, we weren't allowed to touch each other and stuff like that.
Yeah, didn't even have a prize table. We just had to shoot and go on our way. And they were like, there better not be any contact between anybody because the health officials can come out and shut us down at any minute. It was just like, Jesus Christ, dude, like relax.
I know, and it was kind of weird because like you'd been locked. I guess in Wyoming it was much better than a lot of places, but a lot of people had been locked up and stuff. So when you see people you haven't seen in a long time,
You're
you
going to
wanna,
give
like,
people hugs. You're going to
Yeah.
shake their hands.
I didn't want to be the first one to say it, but yeah, you want to give some hugs and like, hey, we're happy to see each other again and stuff like that. So, yeah, the first day was kind of weird, but I feel like it kind of smoothed out after that.
Yeah, no, it did. Yeah. Some of the ROs were kind of eyeing us down. It's just like, yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we do.
Yeah, they loosened up after a while. It was a good crew, but yeah, it was a weird time in the U.S. Weird, less weird in Wyoming, thank God. But yeah, we got through it. So that I guess was like I think that was the first time, Matt, we shot together, and Frank's hanging on here. He's just kind of holding his breath. So we'll get to you in a moment here, Frank. But that was the first time we shot together, and so that was like, I already know you as, a Marine who's on the combat shooting team. So, excuse me,
We call it, we're the action shooting team now.
Action shooting team. Sorry about that.
Yeah. It went through a few different name changes. Like it was at one point called the combat shooting team, but some people got really pissed off just by the name. Like, these Marines have never served in combat. It was like, Jesus Christ, get over it. You know what? If you really want to think about it, we are trying to come up with new tactics, techniques, and procedures that can really help influence, the direction of shooting in combat. So get over it. It's a name.
It's also so Marine Corps to put the word combat and everything. It's like the tactical, the word tactical, innovation, solutions, those pop up everywhere. That's combat for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in listening to your podcast, you hear that all the time. And so from a civilian is like, there's all kinds. So I'm like Googling as I'm going here, like, what does that acronym mean? What are they saying there and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool. But anyway, where I was going with that was, so that's like the now. So how did it start for you, Matt? Like, where did you get started in competitive shooting? Was it in the Marine Corps? Or was it before the Marine Corps?
It was in the Marine Corps. So I guess to give a little history. So I came in the Marine Corps back in 2002. Didn't really know anything about life. I left the boot camp 4 days after I graduated high school, and that was it. I went to security forces first. My first duty station was Spain. I was kind of in paradise. It was like, okay, so this is what the world is like. And, I got to do some cool missions while out there. After I left there, I went to Fast Company, which is a fleet anti-terrorism security team company, just glorified security guards, I guess you can say. After that, I went to 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, where, 3 weeks, 3 weeks after I checked into the unit, no training, no nothing. It's like, hey, we're going to Iraq. All right, cool. This is 2005. Never trained with the unit. And, throughout all my years, it just really, there was training that took place in terms of marksmanship, but nothing in terms of what we do on the team today and a lot of the lessons we try and teach today to prepare people for combat. So I sucked at shooting back then too. I was like, as an infantryman, I kind of suck, and I knew I sucked. So it wasn't really until 2013, whenever 3-Gun Nation was around, I saw it on TV at first on the outdoor channel. I was just like, holy shit, this is awesome. I want to do this. This looks fun. And so it kind of turned into, I want to go do something that's fun, that pertains to my job, and I can bring back to my platoon of Marines, and I can use these same principles to teach them. And so that's what I did for the time I was in the infantry units as a platoon sergeant. And as a platoon sergeant, you're in charge of anywhere from 30 to 50 guys. If you have like machine gun mortar attachments, assaultmen, like there's many different jobs within the infantry, and they like, you have your line platoons, which is all just straight leg riflemen, and they're the guys on the ground hiking, patrolling, and hitting the objective. And then you have machine gunners, mortarmen, assaultmen, and they have their own special skills, and they can get attached to that platoon based on what the mission is. So you can be in charge of anywhere from 30 to 50 guys at any one given time. And as a platoon sergeant, it's your job to make sure their readiness is there and they're able to accomplish any task. And the biggest thing I notice is we don't focus enough on marksmanship. So I really wanted to change that, and I got into that from shooting. After one of my deployments, in 2016, I met this team for the first time, and they were like, hey, you want to come join the Marine Corps shooting team? I was like, nope. They're like, what? I was like, I want to deploy again. I'm going back overseas in 5 months. And I just got back from deployment. They were like, okay. And then whenever I got over there, I got a message from Nate Stocking. He was like, hey, dude, do you want to come take over my job on the shooting team? Just like, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. I just got overseas, so I want to kind of have fun for a bit and see where this takes me. Ultimately, I talked to my wife and I was like, what do you think about me doing this? She's like, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I'm going to be gone for a year. This is, not that this is going to be rough or anything, and not that we're not used to being away for so long, but this could be an opportunity for me to do something I absolutely love and kind of see where it takes me. And so after a couple weeks of deliberating, mentally, I hit Stocking back up and I was like, hey, dude, I'm in. Like, what do I have to do? And so now I'm here. I got to the Marine Corps shooting team in April 23rd of 2018.
No kidding. So there was a lot to go on there. But one of the things that I think stood out was you said that you knew that you sucked at shooting,
mm-hmm.
and you're on a deployment.
Yeah.
In Iraq. Like, now that has to be like a hit to your confidence, right? If you're actually going out and using your rifle in the course of your work.
Yeah, like you don't know you're bad until you're bad. Like we have our annual rifle qualification. We just switched the way the Marine Corps does qualifications. It just switched last year. Before that, it was a system that was in place that was the scoring system. The way they conducted the course of fire was developed in the 1940s.
Is that similar to like the service rifle matches they do at like
yes.
Was it Palma or whatever?
Camp Perry.
Camp Perry, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Same course of fire pretty much, except instead of shooting at the 600-yard line, you're shooting at the 500-yard line.
Okay. Well, so I've experienced this, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this when someone is like, what's 3-gun? And you explain like, oh, it's competition shooting, blah, blah, blah. And someone will, usually an older dude will puff up and say, well, I have a medal and blah, blah, blah. I qualified for this. And when you dig into it, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like slow fire, had a cool vest with a little strap on my hand, so I couldn't move my support hand and stuff like that. And that doesn't really seem.
It's not fun. It's boring.
No, it doesn't seem like applicable either, right? Like that seems like the most ideal position that you could possibly be in, or the most ideal conditions. And then I've never been in combat, but it sounds like sometimes it's chaos, and it may be a little bit faster paced than that.
So, I mean, this is what I'll say, looking at from a historical point of view, whenever the Marine Corps shooting team got into those courses of fire, got into shooting at Camp Perry back in 1907, they did it from a perspective of how can we improve marksmanship in the Marine Corps. Because like the unique perspective of our shooting team is we're not just guys who go out and compete. We're guys who also go out and instruct the Fleet Marine Force. So the best way to learn about your abilities is through competition. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that was the best course of fire that they had at the time, to where they can train large groups of people in order to hit their target. Prior to the shooting team and having a course of fire set up to where you can qualify, the Marines really sucked at shooting. And you're going back into the early 1900s here. Like there was no standard or metric that the Marine Corps could go off of in order to delineate, hey, what's good and what's not good. So when the Marine Corps shooting team came around and they identified a qualification system, it took it in such a way to where Marines can now hit their target. There's a standard, there's a metric. We have something that we can build upon. And so in that sense, that's where it's beautiful, but it's also been our curse because we haven't modernized or innovated to modern day threats in society.
So that makes a lot of sense. Like there's a term, I used to use it when I worked in aerospace, called organizational inertia. It's like we've just always done it that way, and it's worked, so we keep doing it. Other than figuring out like what's the current state of technology or what's the next state of technology kind of thing. So it's cool to see that, there are avenues now to modernize that sort of training. And that's what 3GIQ is basically all about. And we'll get to that in a second here. But Frank, I want to talk to you for a minute, man. I want to hear about your background and how you got into shooting. And same questions, like, was that through the Marine Corps, or did you shoot before you got into the Corps?
Yeah, so I haven't been around as long as Matt has. I joined in 2010. I originally enlisted as a mortarman. Then I became an officer, a communications officer, so satellites, radios, that kind of thing. I for the longest time, I come from an immigrant family, so I shot a 22 when I was in Boy Scouts, and then I shot the service rifle when I first joined in 2010. And we're still using iron sights back then. Just to give you an idea of how long it, like what you were saying, the organizational like inertia, like it takes time. We switched over to RCO with the ACOG right afterwards. So I did that, thought I was good at shooting because I was an expert. Um, and then I started getting into gun ownership, partly because I lived in California and I looked at the laws and realized that they were trying to dissuade people from getting into gun ownership in the first place just by making it really hard, like really annoying. And I can be a contrarian, so it's like I guess game on. I'm gonna become a gun owner. And then I did my first 3-gun match at Linea del Fuego at the Palo Range out there in like Temecula. That was in 2018, and I realized that was terrible.
So was that, I'm sorry, real quick interrupt. Was that a civilian match or was that something that was through the Corps?
No, it was completely civilian.
Okay.
I just looked up what was near me. I found 3-gun and I shot a few matches of that. I had a pump shotgun. I was the only one with the California compliant AR. I showed up with it. Everyone was like, why'd you do that to your gun? I was like, dude, I want to go to jail. And he's like, that guy's a cop. He doesn't care. All these people don't care. Like, I didn't know that there was a law in the books that allows you to basically like have non-compliant stuff if you're shooting competitions.
There is?
There is, yes, in California. It's actually remarkably lenient. Yeah, every time I go back, I print out that state statute, and then I also print out my practice score registration for wherever I'm going. Just to cover my bases, yeah. So yeah, I did that, and I forget his name, honestly. He's the whole reason I got like further into it. But one of the shooters there, he was wearing a jersey. He was just like, hey man, like practice the pistol. Pistol's the hardest to master. It's the cheapest to shoot. They do USPSA here at IDPA like every 2 weeks. I was honestly spoiled. That was a great range. That was a great club. So I started competing regularly. I made a mistake. I did IDPA before I did USPSA. I only made that mistake once.
You still have the vest?
No, I showed up with an appendix carry SIG, and they were like, "You can't use that." And I talked them into convincing me to compete. But then at the end of the day, dude, I actually did pretty well there, and I was like, that's how I knew that it wasn't a very competitive scenario. I was like, okay, let's go see what USPSA is about. And I did that. Did a duty station change to North Carolina where I could shoot USPSA every single weekend if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I did the Marine Corps Marksmanship competition in 2021. That's when I met Matt. I medaled. I went to championships. They were looking to bring me over as a summer shooter, like join them for their competition schedule during the summer. Wasn't able to work because I had agreed to become a company commander in another battalion. But we kept in touch. Matt and I, we ran into each other at tactical games last August or August of that same year, 2021. And at that point, there was a whole back and forth, like, we got to try to get you like on the team full time. It didn't work out. I got orders up here to the DC area. I'm actually about to attend Georgetown for the next 2 years to get my master's, and then my payback tour is to go teach history at the Naval Academy. So I'll be in the DC area for 5 years. Gives me the opportunity to go train with the team, but also to work with Matt and promote the podcast and do a lot of other great things.
Wow, that's cool, man. It's quite the journey, and it's interesting, man. It's interesting how different your stories are, and now you guys are in the same place. And so I think that's what's kind of fun about listening to your podcast is like you guys did an episode where Frank outlined like how to start your own shooting team within the Marine Corps, and I thought that was like super interesting because in my mind, like there's the reserve action shooting team and there's the normal action shooting team.
Yep.
Right. So yep. I never thought that there could be like other sort of micro teams. Frank, since you went through that process, can you kind of just give us like I know you guys did a deep dive and people can listen to that. I think it was like episode 21 or something like that, but Can you give us like a brief overview of like what that means to Marines and how they can basically start their own shooting team?
Yeah, absolutely. If you get your commanding officer to sign off on it, there is a clause within our security order, and I allude to that exact security order in that episode, that allows commanding officer to release so many like small arms and ammunition for the use of competition. It says that in the order. So therein lies your justification to use Marine Corps funds, like command funds, as long as you figure out the logistics of getting people, guns, and ammo to your nearest competition, you can make that happen. So what I did was I had a regular. We did dry fire 2 times a week. We just went to the armory. We took out weapons. For the longest time, people were like, "What are you guys doing?" We're just running around like air guns and stuff, and like it basically looked like we're doing LARPing. That's what it looks like. That's what dry fire is. It's just LARPing in your basement. But we did that. I put on. I
just call it DARPing, dry action role play.
Oh, see, like every time I come out of the basement and I'm like dripping sweat, my wife is like, "What were you doing back down there?" And I was like,
"Why is it humid in the basement?"
It's just easier to say I was LARPing, I can't describe it to you. But yeah, so we did the dry fire, and then we did live fire, and the team actually helped us out. They sent a couple instructors down for our pistol range, and then we did a rifle range. And then I took like 20 Marines to the Marine Corps marksmanship competition.
This is when you were in San Diego, is that right?
No, this is actually when I was in Lejeune. So this was 2021, 2022.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, most recently. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it. Writing orders, talking to my boss, like selling my boss on the idea. And then like everything's so compartmentalized in the military, right? Like you got to get in with the right people, like the logistics people, the ammo people, motor transportation, the base. Like there's just so many walls to get over. But luckily, I talked to Matt a lot about it. He pointed me out to one of the James Archbell, like one of the guys who works on Lejeune 2, who's done these kinds of things. And I actually ended up creating pretty good relationships with Range Control and some other organizations, and we were able to make it happen.
That I thought was like one of the most interesting parts about the podcast, Frank, is that you kind of outlined like exactly how to do it for people. You basically gave them like a blueprint, and then listening to how much Matt helped you out with that. I think that's really cool that the action shooting team can spread that out amongst all the other areas, and then again come down and help instruct and do stuff like that. That seems like really cool, and it's not something I had thought about at all. Like when you hear like the action shooting team is here to develop techniques for training the Marine Corps as a whole, like that's kind of an abstract thought, right? Because like the Marine Corps is really big. So like, how does that happen? And then that's like one little thing not one little thing, that's pretty major, but that's like one avenue that the action shooting team helps out the Marine Corps as a whole. What are some other ways that the action shooting team helps out the Marine Corps as a whole?
So I'll kind of start out with this. When I first came to the team and, I sat down with my battalion commander, and him and I already had previous experience with each other. We worked together overseas in 2017. So it was just like, oh shit, you're here. Oh shit, you're here. Great. I got to deal with you now. But, the Marine Corps shooting team, we still compete in high power. And at the time we still competed in bullseye. And he basically said, look, I just got done with a conversation with the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and he basically called you guys, the Marine Corps shooting team as a whole, as an expensive luxury. And that's a very dangerous statement. Because
not a good place to be.
No, and it's so like me and a couple of the guys on the team kind of looked at that statement for what it was, and we were like, he's absolutely right. Like, what can we do to make ourselves from an expensive luxury to an expensive necessity? Because no matter how you crack the nut, we're still going to be expensive, but how can we preserve our place as a team within this organization? And so a lot of what we do now is, so you can break our time on the team, or you can break down one whole year as you have 6 months where you're going out and competing, and then you have 6 months where you're focusing on training and developing Marines in the Marine Corps. And it all really started, like, we've always what we used to call division matches, which is, there was more of a recruiting tool, and you know, there was a lot of teaching that went on, but that was that old high power and, you know, precision pistol style matches. But in 2016 2017 timeframe, they formed what is now called what was then called the combat matches, to the Marine Corps marksmanship competitions, where we're hosting four matches, sometimes 5 matches in a year, whether it's at Quantico, Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton, Okinawa, Japan, and Hawaii. We're hosting matches in each of those locations, and we're getting anywhere. We've had upwards of 300 people at a match to a lower number of 56 people. And it's based off of what the range facility itself will allow. So we spend a lot of time developing ourselves as instructors based off of what we learn in competition, to get the Marines the most up-to-date information, to keep them what we call lethal. And we have this big buzzword called lethality. If you listen to our podcast, you're going to hear lethality a lot. It's the biggest buzzword of them all, but it's true.
I remember that from the reserve action shooting team too. Like, their goal was to increase the lethality of the average Marine, right?
Yep. And so that's our overall goal. Like, you know, how can we increase the lethality of that individual Marine? So if he goes to combat, he can get rounds on target immediately. He can understand exactly what he's looking at through his optic. And so a lot of what we do is we teach people in a competitive setting how competition can actually help save your life in combat.
If I may, so that first week, all instruction, and then it goes in competition. So just to give you an example, Dave. So the pistol team would teach like a bill drill, right? Like the importance of grip, like focusing on the target, that kind of thing. And then you go get a lesson from the action team, and they would teach you how to move like laterally with a rifle, left and right on the range, shooting on the move. And then you go hit up like the high power bullseye rifle guys. But honestly, they just taught us barricade stuff, like rip the stock out of your shoulder every time you're transitioning between ports in the barricade. We're going to try shooting off a rooftop. We're going to try shooting in the offset, just so you know where your point of impact shifts. And this was all with service rifle and pistol. So I was using like a really old, janky, honestly, M4 ACOG, and I shot the bread at both times, man. Old faithful.
And so, you know, Frank actually got the first iteration of like our USPSA team. So it wasn't really until 2020, you know, when COVID hit, like there was no high power or precision pistol nationals. And so at that point in time, I just gotten appointed as the staff non-commissioned officer in charge. So the dude that doesn't have a degree, I'm a non-commissioned officer, and I'm like the senior guy on the team. You know, I got appointed in that position, and I have like an officer that's over me. And so I told him, I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for us to innovate and change the team and modernize the team, and get rid of precision pistol. I'm not going to go into details, but that individual was very heartbroken when I said that, because he had a lot of affiliation and a lot of love for the bullseye sports. Me, on the other hand, not really. But it opened up a door to where I can be like, we don't have a high power or a bullseye pistol season. So we're going to split half the bullseye pistol team into 3-gun on the action shooting team, and the other half on the action pistol team, as we're called now. And so it just opened this door, and you can really see the difference in the level of instruction from when the guys on the precision pistol team would just go out and teach, and then the level of instruction that the now formed action pistol team goes out and teaches. Like it's a night and day difference. Both were experts with what they did and how they did it. It's now just the flow of information and how that information gets out there.
I love that. And I actually remember, okay. Follow me on this one. So first stage at the Wyoming governor's match, your guys were switching like holster. Like after one guy would shoot, he would just take his whole belt off and hand it to the next guy and just put it right on him. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if I asked you or if it was Chris, but I was like, what are these guys doing? And you're like, these are bullseye shooters. And I just thought like, whoa, this is going to be a long weekend. But man, they got into it. They really enjoyed it. And they're surprisingly good for dudes that you just like tossed in the deep end of the pool.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. Kyle Hudson, really solid dude. And like, he really took shape into taking the action shooting team, taking that on and learning a new discipline, and really developed in an all-around just really good shooter. He's one of those naturally talented guys that, you put a pistol in his hand and he's going to shoot precision pistol. He just came back for the summer and he went and shot up at Perry. And he set a personal record with a 45 pistol. All his shots were in a moose knuckle right there at the center of the target. And but then you can put, a SIG in his hand or whatever gun that he has and, put all 3 guns in his hand and he's going to know what to do. And he's going to be lethal, and he's going to be able to go back to his Marines and his unit, and he's going to be able to teach them the same principles. And that's a beautiful part of the team, because we're a lot different than the construct of the Army marksmanship unit, and we're never going to change. When you come to the team, you're only here for 3 years. It's not like you can join the Marine Corps and go straight to the Marine Corps shooting team. You can be a world-class shooter, but you're going to be a private PFC coming in the Marine Corps. I'm sorry, but you can't come to the team. You got to put your time in your unit. You got to learn your job. You got to learn your trade. And then you'll have an opportunity to try out for the team. And we're not always going to take the best shooters out there, because our biggest thing is I have to trust somebody to travel across the country with weapons and ammunition, that they're going to do the right thing at all times. And, me as a leader, I have to be able to know that they have the right character, the right mindset to go and do those things. We can develop talent, but you can't develop character.
That's a really good point. And so on that note, I think, I feel like a lot of the shooters do, look at the Army marksmanship unit, because of obviously Horner was there for years, and they've got, Joel Turner and Nate Staskowitz, a bunch of great shooters, and it is like a career. So you see those same faces like all the time, right? Whereas the Marine Corps action shooting team turns over, and so can you describe like what is that term that you are in the action shooting team? How does like the recruitment go? You both had like unique stories of how you guys got hooked up into it, but if someone is in the Marine Corps, they want to be on the action shooting team, how do they get to be a part of it? And then I guess like also, if you're not on the Marine Corps and you want to be in the Marine Corps, but you want to be on the action shooting team, like what path would you suggest people take?
So the traditional path to coming to the Marine Corps shooting team, which has been around for a long time, is you go out and you go compete in the Marine Corps marksmanship competitions, no matter where you are. It's like we're in each, area of the world at some point in time where there's a Marine Corps base. Yes and no. It really depends on what your unit is doing at the time, and if they're going to allow you to go to the marksmanship competitions, because a lot of it, yeah, we're capped it to how many people we can actually come out. If you're stationed in Hawaii, we can only support maybe 60 people, just because that's what the range facility will allow. If you're in Okinawa, we can support 150 to 200 people. If you're in Camp Lejeune, we can support maybe 200, 230 people. If you're in California, we've supported up to 300. Not that we like doing that, because it degrades from the level of instruction and the personalization and tailoring of that instruction to each individual. It's not like the traditional bullseye sports where everybody's online shooting at the same time. You're getting personalized instruction one-on-one at some point in time. So if you go to one of those marksmanship competitions and you finish in the top 10%, then you're going to get an invite out to Marine Corps championships. In Marine Corps championships, it's the top 10% from each Marine Corps marksmanship competition, all in one setting, and we're trying to find the best competitive shooter in the Marine Corps. Who's our number one guy? Who's our top 10% of the top 10% of each area? So at that point, we're picking and choosing, we're observing, we're seeing how people interact with other people during the competition, and seeing if somebody's being an asshole or if somebody's actually trying to help out. Because like I said, you can't teach character, and at some point it's going to come out. So a lot of the times at those at championships and at the Marine Corps marksmanship competitions, if I'm not teaching or if I'm not running a stage, I'm sat back in an area where people really can't see me, or I'm just kind of part of the status quo, and I'm just listening and I'm observing. And so I'm writing names down, and then at some point during that competition, those individuals are going to get a phone call or an email, or we're going to just put it out to everybody. Hey, we need to see these individuals at this time for an interview. And we do a panel interview, and we ask them questions, and we try and see how they think, and if there's somebody that we think will fit onto the team. And then after we have done a panel interview on every single person that we wanted to talk to, we'll put out the names. Hey, these are the people that we want to bring out for the entire summer. And then we observe them over the summer period. And if they do well during the summer, then they get a permanent invite to the Marine Corps shooting team. Now, there's a lot of steps involved in that as well. A lot of coordination with I guess in civilian terms, your HR reps and your career managers. I had to do a lot of work with them to actually bring them over. So there's a lot of steps involved, but it's not impossible. Another way we've done it, we've used technology to our favor. I've taught one of our guys, Alex Goking. We found him on Instagram. He was stationed in Yuma, Arizona. And we're like, this guy's fucking good. and so we just kind of kept watching him. And then I think it was Kim Peterson. He just sent an email to us, and he's like, yo, this dude's good. You need to bring him out to the Marine Corps shooting team. And so we kept watching, and we reached out to Alex, and we're like, hey man, you want to come to the team? And he's on the team now. Took some time, but we got a good dude. And I love him to death, because he basically took the vision that we put in place, and he's improving upon that vision.
So that's got to be tough, right? Because you're finding good Marines, and for you it looks like oh hey, we found another good one. Let's bring him in. Let's talk to him. But for someone else, they're losing someone would you say under their command? Is that the proper term? That is a good Marine. They're losing a good Marine to give them to you.
They are, but at some point, like, you're not going to be in one location for more than 3 years at a time. So at some point, they're going to have to leave that command and they're going to have to go somewhere. They're going to have to go either to recruiting duty or be a drill instructor, or, some off the wall job somewhere. So why not bring them somewhere where they're going to be in a fun environment, but at the same time, they're going to be able to teach skills that are going to keep Marines alive in combat.
And if I could add to that, it's always good to see the people working for you that have like supported you and made you successful go on and do great things. So my perspective when I was a company commander was, if you are good at your job and you put in the work and you are of high character, I want to send you on deployment. Honestly, like, I'm going to lose you, right? That's going to hurt me, but it's good for the Marine Corps because you're going to diversify your experience. You're going to get something from it, and you're going to be more likely to stick around. If I hoard you and I keep you to myself, then you're going to grow to resent me, and
you're going to get out of the Marine Corps.
You're going to get out of the Marine Corps because you're going to be like, I joined to deploy and see the world and go do my job and be a badass. And instead, I sat around Camp Lejeune for 3 years. So he mentioned Alex Goking. I'll mention another one. Sam Nelson, currently on the US PSA team. He was one of my Marines before when I first got to Lejeune, and I'm always the guy like trying to get people into Marines into shooting competitions. He showed up. He showed up with the left-handed Glock, and in his first stage, he put one shot in every target. It was a US PSA competition, so he had like 10 mics.
Did you say a left-handed Glock?
Yeah, it was. He literally had to like shift his hands in order to like hit the magazine release. It was a buddy's Glock. Like, that's a lot of these guys. Like, you have to understand, like, they're living in the barracks. Like, they don't have means to own their own gun. It's expensive. It's irritating to like go through the base protocols. So,
I mean, we're talking about people in like their early 20s, right? Like, shit's expensive when you don't have when you're first starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. But fast forward 2 years, and like, he surpassed me. Like, he got really, really good. They saw him on Instagram. They saw that he was a master carry optics shooter, and they went out and got him. So,
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. So, Frank, from your perspective, so you guys talk about a lot of modernizing and a lot of innovating in the Marine Corps. Is that technique or is that technology? Is that both? Like, what are the contributions that you see there?
It's a little bit of both. Technology is always a step behind, just based on the military procurement system, right? It just takes time for something to get approved, and by the time it actually like hits the point, it gets to the point where the service members are actually using it. Case in point, I mentioned that I shot the Beretta at the last Marine Corps marksmanship competition. I'm part of like non-combat units, so our units are not going to get the SIG M18 until like 2023. So we're using like the Beretta on its very last gasps. So some of the new technology that's coming in, we have some LPVOs that are getting put on service rifles. We have like the M27, which is like the HK
416.
416, piston driven. They're putting suppressors on a lot of these things, a lot of cool stuff. But I'd say also techniques. Like, there's some things that the Marine Corps has taught us that in the long term, like, we've kind of realized having, like, for example, we all taught to shoot front sight focus. Like, when I shot irons in boot camp, when I shot pistol for the first time, and now the prevailing sentiment is to be target focused, right? Speed, technique, all those things. And it took Matt and the shooting team to go out and realize these things and then bring them back via the Marine Corps marksmanship competitions. And then, like, guys like me might learn it on their own and be able to teach some Marines. So slowly but surely, but there's still, like, we're still trying to get over kind of what Matt was talking about, like our qualifications that have historically been very bullseye oriented. We're still trying to get past that. We just updated our rifle qualification to where you're using barricades, you're wearing kit, you're you're having to shoot moving targets. Like, I think it's a lot better than what we have, but it took us so long. Like, it literally just rolled out, right? So it's taken us a while to get there. But all we got to do is continue to push the needle forward.
Interesting. One of those techniques that I've heard quite a bit from Mark Yackley is they teach you not to rest on the mag, right? When you're shooting, and that's like an old steel mag thing or aluminum mag thing where, like, in 3-gun, if you can go prone, you're on that mag and you're going to find something else to brace on and stuff like that.
And so to kind of go off in another way, like, I mentioned the whole expensive luxury to expensive necessity is we now go out to different military units throughout the Marine Corps. Like, they'll request the team to come out, and it's something that's really started last year. One of the first mobile training teams, we call them, that I went on was out to 2nd Recon Battalion down at Camp Lejeune. And like, we utilize this thing called discovery learning. We show them what it is that they have to do, and then we just give them a timer and said, figure out what works for you. And we'll be here to kind of help you with that technique. And you, like, light bulbs pop off and people are like, holy shit, like, this is really cool. We're doing this faster than we ever did. And then we've kind of put them like in their own little competition between each other. And they're like, they didn't realize that competition can just be between themselves whenever they're training, and light bulbs start popping off. They're trash talking each other, like putting each other on the spot, and they're learning at the same time. And it's in a fun environment because like we've talked before, the Marine Corps really knows how to suck the fun out of things. but we try and do it in such a way now that we're not putting those same stressors, those mental roadblocks in front of people. We're wanting them to get out of their comfort zone in order to learn. And so, like, we're now doing more of those mobile training teams with these units. That way they have that ability to teach each other and learn.
I like that. That cracks me up how you're saying the Marine Corps sucks the fun out of things. When on one of your episodes, Frank said that he was trying to show people how fun shooting can be, and that just like that thought process, because I live it every day with the podcast, and being the cheerleader of the shooting sports, basically, like, shooting is fun is just a foregone conclusion for me, and it never occurred to me that it could be such like a bureaucratic pain in the butt to actually go out and train, that it wasn't any fun. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. Now you were talking about discovery training. That's the correct term. Is that right?
Discovery learning.
Discovery learning. So give me an example of discovery learning, like something that you would teach someone, and like exactly like step by step, like how that would go.
So something as simple, like, I'll start it with the simplest of things. Your draw on a pistol. A lot of people aren't taught properly how to draw a pistol. They're just like, they grab the gun by the grip and they pull it out, they point it at the target. A 4-step learning, whatever you want to call it, or 4-step draw process, whatever it is. Here we are, we're showing them step by step. We're giving them a time frame that they have to hit. But then we're saying, hey, go practice this on your own. Do it in a safe environment. We're going to be walking around, hitting things. And then they're discovering how fast that they can accurately hit a target from the draw. Like, they are reinforcing in themselves the process without any supervision, which is very rare.
Interesting. Okay. So you're basically giving them like the freedom to figure it out for themselves and to work their way through it. Okay. I got it.
Yeah. If I could jump in. So yeah. I did this as like a farewell to, at the end of my company command, I just brought my Marines out. So the new qualification involves shooting on the move and a bunch of other, like, shooting off barricades. And I would teach them like, hey, you can do it this way, you can do it this way. I would try to do these things with stance. I would just step back and just let them shoot, right? And I would just sometimes step up, give them an observation or two, have them try something else. And at the end of it, they're like, we never get to do this. And what they mean by that, I know exactly what they mean, is that when you go for rifle qualification, maybe you get a little bit of time practice, but it's a very like,
it's very structured, and it's like herding cattle. Like
that's literally, so the guys who run the range, they're taught, they're like, they are cattle, get them through, they need their qualifications. It doesn't matter, there's no quality control, right? There's no like, we want them all to be experts, or we want them all to be lethal. It's just get them through, just to say that we have gotten them provisionally rifle qualified, and that all Marines are still riflemen.
It's like it's a check in the box.
It is a check in the box. You can tell like it's getting to me right now. I'm getting like, I just
let it out, Frank. You're in a safe place, buddy.
But if you plan a range and you give your Marines plenty of ammo and you allow them to fail and experiment, everyone's body is different, everyone's gear setup's different. Eventually they get to a point where they're like, oh, okay, this is what works for me. A lot of Marines never figured it out in the first place. And that probably seems like strange to you, because like that's what competition's all about, like figure out your gear setup and dial everything in when you go to a 3-gun match or a USPSA match. Marines never get the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that does seem odd to me. Again, from the only perspective I have is, other than talking to you guys, is a civilian perspective, and we don't get to see that kind of stuff. Like, I watched Full Metal Jacket a bunch of times, and like that's my reference, right? They didn't focus a whole lot on the HR and the trainables on a computer in that movie, right? So you don't see that portion of the Marine life. But talking to you guys and listening to your podcast, which I think it's a really cool way to see like behind the curtain and what like your day-to-day life is. I forget that, and maybe there's other people out there like me, but I forget that there's 120 other things you guys do in a day that's not related to going to the range and working on marksmanship skills and training and shooting from barricades and, you know, running around in kit and stuff like that. So I think that's a unique thing about the 3GIQ podcast that you guys bring to the table, is that it is, it's not only is it giving civilians like a peek behind the curtain, but it's also giving your fellow Marines an outlet to realize like, hey, there's another way, and we can find those resources, and we can become more effective.
Oh yeah. And last week, was it? We did the episode where it was simple solutions to improve. Mm-hmm. And that was stemmed from a conversation I had with a friend of mine. You know, he's a master sergeant in the Marine Corps. He's they're restructuring the way the infantry is now, and so he's an operations chief within an infantry company. And he's talking about, he's like, hey, I want to kind of have an unofficial infantry marksmanship symposium with all the 0369, 0399. That's like 0369 is an infantry unit leader. 0399 is a master sergeant, master gunnery sergeant component of that. He wants to have a symposium with the infantry guys, the senior leadership, saying how can we make marksmanship like at the forefront again? What can we do to improve? And one of the first things I told him, and I said this on the podcast, is like, when you go to combat, what is one thing you have on yourself at all times? Well, your weapon. Why wouldn't I? Okay, exactly. So why don't you do that in a garrison environment, back at Camp Lejeune, back at Camp Pendleton? And and I told him, I was like, hindsight's 2020. I'm looking at this from a perspective of almost a 20-year career that's about to be completed, and things I wish I had done, in lessons I want to give back to the Marine Corps that I learned through my range of combat deployments and peacetime deployments. Like, why don't we carry our weapons with us at all times when we're on Camp Lejeune? Just like training every single day. Why not? We have resources and books nowadays that you can go out and buy that teaches you how to dry fire. There's simple solutions that you can use to make Marines more lethal and more familiar with their weapon systems. And so, like, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, bridge the gap between, the commanders, the lower enlisted, and, the team, and get everybody on the same page in order to teach lessons that's going to keep people alive.
So for you two, and maybe you both attack this question individually. You're in the action shooting team for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the Marine Corps for 20 years for a career.
Yeah.
Like, how can you impact the Marine Corps or the training? How can you leave like a legacy of constant improvement so we don't fall, or so the Marine Corps doesn't fall into the same trap of like in 90 years, there's a in the metaverse, I guess there's another podcast talking about like, well, they developed this in 2015, that kind of stuff. So how do you keep that now that you've made these strides and they are making improvements, how do you keep that constant innovation in marksmanship in the Marine Corps?
I'll take a stab at it. So yeah, this podcast for us is really about getting the word out. Like, the lessons that we've learned, making Marines realize that there are more lessons to be learned than what the basic provisional Marine Corps qualification will give you. Really, like, part of it's part leading by example and increasing influence. So everyone that I've trained, right, some of them end up becoming competitive shooters for the rest of their days. Others, like, they at least have an idea of what it takes to get better. So for me, it's doing this podcast, it's creating formalized teams whenever I can. It's advocating to my commanders and saying, like, this should be important to you. It's important to me. And this is my plan. I just need your approval. I just need your backing. And luckily I had a boss who, like, more or less, agreed to that at my last duty station. I think in the long term, Matt and I would like to get to the point where we are able to, like, help Marines get to local competitions. At this point, like, I know the Lejeune area pretty well. I know the California area pretty well. I would love to be able to just, like, reach out and be like, here are the competitions going on. We can put you in touch with this former member of the Marine Corps shooting team, or just another Marine that we know shoots regularly, or one of the civilians that shoots out there. We can get your gear together. Maybe we can subsidize some of the costs, but we just want you to go out there, do some shooting, film yourself, right? Like, send that to us and we can possibly get some members of the shooting team to take a look at it and give you some tips. And hopefully this is something that you end up taking seriously, or becomes a hobby or whatnot, but you can continue to learn from. And then, like, you can bring that back to your unit. People can see that you're a good shot, and that gives you another opportunity to lead. That's some of our longer term, goals there. But Matt, I'll hand it over to you.
I mean, so from an institutional perspective, being where I'm at on the Marine Corps shooting team, to me, it's one, it comes down to recruiting the right people, always having the right people in place, and having people who have kind of a shared vision, but a vision where they want to take your vision and improve upon it, always having a mindset of modernization and innovation. And that's, like, from the shooting team pure, having the right people in place, people who are always looking to push the envelope. Whenever I got to the team, I saw we were doing high power and precision pistol, and it's like, well, if I can get rid of one, what would be the best one to get rid of? And it's precision pistol. Who shoots one-handed at 50 yards and 25 yards anymore?
With the other hand stuffed in their pants, right?
Yes. Pocket pants, whatever. And it kind of came down to, I was like, I have no problem with this competition, but I have a problem that we're still doing this in the Marine Corps. So what changes can I make to where we're going to evolve into something better? And it's just, anytime that you do change, there's going to be a lot of work that is involved, and it's being willing to take that work upon yourself to make that change. There was a lot of endless nights, a lot of planning, just being at the office from 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning until 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, sometimes later, just planning things out. And it's being willing to take on that burden in order to improve it for the whole. And so that's my answer from an institutional perspective. Now, my thoughts, and it's the same vision as Frank, and that's why we have so many shared viewpoints, and we complement each other in that sense. I'm getting out. I'm no longer going to have a voice in that community, like on the team anymore. So it's a matter of using my podcast as a unofficial media source for the shooting team to continue to get out there, get the message out of what they are trying to do and what they are doing to change, and kind of influence from an outside perspective now, until I'm a FUD and people are like, get off your fucking soapbox and move on.
Yeah, I guess you just have to keep performing and people keep listening to you, right? Like, one of the examples you use in your podcast a lot is James Gill, a guy that we all know and respect, and anyone who's shot with him can say, like, he's just an impressive individual on the range, and he has been for like a freaking long time.
Yeah. So. And what really impressed me about Gill, and like, he was my conduit to the team. Like, he's that guy that I saw and I was like, this guy has one eye and one leg, and he's shooting better than guys with 2 eyes and 2 legs. Oh my God. And he's on the Marine Corps shooting team. I want to be that guy, minus missing limbs and stuff. But, but it's like, he really impressed upon me, like being humble, always pushing the limits, being a good dude, and being an ambassador to the program that or company you're representing. There's a lot of lessons that you can learn from one person, and he's one of those guys you can learn many of those lessons from. So he was my in to the team initially.
Yeah, it's back to where we started, right? Seeing Three Gun Nation, looking at that and saying, "Oh man, I want to do that."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't. It would take hours to list all the things I've learned from James. Like, he's just an amazing individual. So, but we won't circus ego anymore. How about that?
Well, what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to get an episode set up with Gil and one of Frank's friends, Jared Dalton, who was one of the OICs of the team, the officers in charge of the action shooting team, while both of them were together. And so we want to have an episode where it's like, I also want to bring Chris Scott on board because he was in charge of the action shooting team. So we have like the most recent 2, leadership, persons of leadership on the team, and 2 of the guys who started it, and kind of have a perspectives of what they went through to get the team to where it was whenever they left, and then the perspectives of us, and just see where the comparisons lie.
I'll be listening to that one for sure. That sounds incredibly interesting to me. I'm pumped, dude. I love what you guys are doing. And I hope it wasn't a secret. You mentioned this before the podcast. Obviously, Matt, you're going to be retiring soon. There's an upcoming episode where we're going to be doing a brain dump from you to Frank, and you guys are going to, try to get everything Matt's learned in the last 15, 20 years in one podcast. I can't wait to hear it, but Frank, give us a preview. Like what's something you want to know from Matt, and maybe save all the gems, but give us a preview for what you want to learn from Matt in that type of format.
Yeah. Matt and I have mentioned this before. So I'm an officer and he's a staff non-commissioned officer. He's mentioned it, like part of the reason we work together so well is like those two have to work together particularly well. I'm really interested in like leadership and experience. So one of the questions I have for him is like, we'll call it the sweet and sour question. What was one instance in which being diplomatic and playing the game got you to the best possible result? And then what's one instance in which you kind of had to be an asshole in order to get something done right at that moment? There's a bunch of questions like that kind of posed to like get him to draw on like different parts of his career. And really, I mean, I've been in 12 years. It's still unfathomable, like some of the experiences that you've gone through, Matt. I think another one that I'm interested in hearing about is like what would you consider the toughest part of your career? How'd you overcome it? And what were some like takeaways from it? 20 years is a long time. And really like that's your entire adult life, dude. So I'm really excited to hear some of the insights from you from that particular questions.
Yeah, I really have to do a deep dive and do a lot of thought, like, because like you were asking those questions and I'm still thinking like that's a lot to answer, and there's a lot of things to really draw from, and I'm excited to do that episode, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Hey man, can you sum up your 20-year career in 90 minutes for me, please?
I saw shit, I did shit, and I laughed shit.
Man, that podcast was a minute long. But that's why you brought me on, man. Like I'm a complete nerd with coming up with questions, and I gave those to him a month in advance because I don't really care about surprising him in the moment. I want well thought out, and he's got 20 years to cruise through, right? He's got like different phases of his life. At one point, you got out of the Marine Corps, came back in. Mm-hmm. And then at some point you became a husband, you became a father, like so many things have changed. So yeah, really, really, really excited for that episode.
Yeah. And that, I have to say, like, that's why I really, really enjoy having Frank around, because we can draw on the officer, staff non-commissioned officer experience, because he's the guy who's supposed to come in with the conceptual theory, conceptual planning. And I'm the guy that tells him, no, that fucking sucks. Or that's a great idea. Like, and it's all based on, he's been giving the tools to do something, and I'm the guy who's been given the experience or have experienced those things. So we can really draw upon like the idea, the theory, and draw upon the experience and put it to the test. And we create the structure and the environment for the environment that we work in.
And that's one of the things I'm most grateful for, just in terms of being in the Marine Corps. I can't imagine many other professional communities in which you start as a brand new, like 22-year-old fresh out of college, and they pair you up with someone who's a decade your senior, who has all this real life experience. And it's not like their only purpose is to mentor you, but that's a large part of why they're there. So a lot of the staff non-commissioned officers, like I wouldn't be here without them. People like Matt really made me successful throughout my career. And honestly, they're kind of more fun to hang out with than my peers. I'm going to be honest. Officers are kind of boring, man.
Oh, no. I went on a trip down in Georgia once with a bunch of pilots.
Pilots are not real officers.
Yeah, they know how to party.
They're frat boys who con their way into multi-million-dollar airframes. Like, they wear pajamas for a living, dude.
Oh man, a onesie. Call it a onesie. It's even worse.
Onesies for furry suits.
A romper. All right, guys. Well, so 3GIQ is the podcast, folks. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend checking it out. It's in iTunes and stuff like that, just like the Three Gun Show here. It's been fun talking to you guys. I really appreciate your perspective, and I'm going to be listening to your the rest of your episodes going forward. Want to get a final thought or piece of advice for the audience from you, Frank. We'll start with you, bud.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having us on, man. This has been it's been really, really great. Yeah, I'm excited for what, even with Matt retiring, I'm still going to be around for the next 5 years. I'm excited for what we're going to be able to accomplish on our podcast, helping Marines out, getting them competitive shooting. I am a USPSA guy mostly, but I am putting together some three-gun stuff. Dave, I started listening to the podcast. I started just picking out like ones that I'm interested in. I listened to the interview with Max Leograndis.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, you got a great show. I started in three gun. I want to get back to it. So you'll probably be seeing me in the future at a match or two.
Dude, I'd love to see you in a match, man. Always great to have another listener. So thanks for tuning in, man. Matt, what about you, bud? What's a final thought or piece of advice for the audience here?
So, Dave, first I want to say thank you for having us on. Like I told you earlier, like your show's been one of those shows that's really shaped my career in the shooting community. Listening about a lot of the lessons that you have to offer, and one thing I guess I can tell people is continuously be a lifelong learner, constantly educate yourself, listen to the different shows, listen to different perspectives, put those perspectives to the test and find out what works for you. Ask the questions, reach out. One thing I learned whenever I started a podcast is it never hurts to ask a podcast host any questions, because more often than not, they want to give you that information, because that's why they do this. They want to teach people. They want to impart their knowledge upon people. When you see the Marine Corps shooting team out at a competition, pick their brain, because they love nothing more than teaching the knowledge that they've learned over the years upon other people.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's a really good point. And from the perspective of someone who did get to shoot with you guys, I saw that firsthand. It's you guys are incredibly approachable, friendly. You know what the hell you're talking about, and you're some of the best resetters on the planet. So great guys to have on a squad. I'll squad with you anytime. Guys, thanks for being on the show. I do appreciate your time, and I'm glad to hear that the show has impacted your game. It's great to that means a lot to me, and I'll be listening to your show, dude. Everybody else should go check it out. 3GIQ.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thanks, man.